Hello, Susan Yasui here with chapter 25 of Through the Eyes of a Child, which, as you probably remember, is my daughter's story through her eyes from when we lived in Hiroshima when she was a child. So, this chapter 25 is entitled The Trees Remember. It seems so odd to me that my parents were my age once. I can hardly imagine it, even with the pictures I've seen. My dad's country elementary school seems too small for him. My cousin Mami-chan walks down a dirt road from the big Japanese farmhouse to get there. She goes there all by herself and no one worries about cars or strangers. The river winds along quietly next to the road. Sometimes she stops to throw rocks into the water, just like my dad did, startling the fish who wish the rock was food. Mami-chan walks along the road for about 30 minutes, even in the snow. I think she is lucky, but she thinks riding a school bus would be more fun. I asked my mom to show me where she went to school. She assured me that her school really does exist and that when she was my age, she ran through the schoolyard just like I do at my school and just like my dad did at his school and my grandpa and his grandpa. I can't even get an idea of that with my mind's eye. I can only think of these older people trying to play on the jungle gym or getting stuck coming down the slide because their hips are too wide. I can see my Japanese grandparents squatted down, sitting on their heels, talking to each other, or my dad reaching his feet high into the sky, pumping the swing back and forth, but not as children. It was about this time last year when my mom kept her promise. She took me to her school. The drive was like in a storybook. One minute we were in a large California city, an hour or so outside San Francisco, and then suddenly we dropped down into a hidden valley, dense with redwood trees. The air was suddenly cooler, and the smell of the redwood made me feel lighter somehow. There was another smell I thought I recognized. Mom said that it was the California laurel trees. Their leaves are the bay leaves we use in our spaghetti sauce. The road curved around as if in a huge tree tunnel. Only small splashes of sunlight made it through the layers and layers of tree branches. There were no houses to be seen anywhere. My mom said we would have to park the car and hike way up the hill on a small footpath to find the house where she used to live. We'd visit there next time, she said. There wasn't enough time today. Then we turned a corner and suddenly there was a small two-room schoolhouse nestled among the trees. She said that one room was for elementary school and the other was for junior high school. Then for high school they bussed into a nearby city. There were only 2 teachers and hardly any of the students were in the same grade, so they would study on their own individual programs. There was no teacher standing up talking to the whole class at once. My mom said that she got the best education there. Other schools in the district couldn't get the same results. The school was closed that day, but we walked right into the schoolyard to look around. A blonde-haired lady was inside the schoolhouse and came out to greet us. "May I help you?" she asked. Mom said, "My daughter wanted to see my school of about 40 years ago, so here we are." The lady then looked more closely at my mom as if to figure out who she was. My mom told her maiden name, and the lady said, "Oh, you must have known my mom." Well, yes, my mom did remember. She remembered that the family was full of girls. Out of about 10 children, not one was a boy. She also remembered that one of the girls near her own age had fallen ill with a severe case of the flu. Her dad bundled her up in a blanket and started driving out of the canyon to a hospital in the big city, but she passed away on the way. That stuck with my mom all these years, but of course she didn't mention anything about it to the blonde-haired niece of the girl my mom remembered. The lady told her all about her parents, how they were doing, and caught up on all of my mom's family news too. Then Mom showed me the redwood grove across the little bridge just behind the school. She stood there with a slight smile on her face, kind of shaking her head. She said, "All these years gone by and not one tree here looks the least bit different. Imagine how many generations of children they've watched play here." Her voice trailed off. Then, speaking again, she said, "Look there at that old fallen tree stump. Can you see where the kids have run up and down there so much that a path is worn up the side of the stump? That is just like it was when I ran up and down in that same spot," she said. "I took off running up the stump myself in the excitement of doing something my mom had done as a child." I played in my mom's schoolyard for a long time. She watched me closely, but sometimes I saw a kind of glaze come over her eyes, as if she were in a different time, hearing the sounds and seeing the sights of a generation gone by. When it was time to leave, my mom pulled the car back onto the winding road. Soon, we noticed a man walking down the road toward us. I wondered where he could have come from. There was no evidence of any building other than the school and a U.S. post office around the first corner. My mom slowed the car to a stop and rolled down the window. She knew him, but she forgot exactly who he was. He looked more closely at my mom, and a smile jumped across his face as my mom told him her earlier name, and he said, "Sue, I'm Jono." "Oh my gosh, Jono," Mom said, with such warmth in her voice that I felt good too. She couldn't believe that the small boy of her childhood was still here, as if nothing had ever changed. He looked different, of course, full bearded, with gray streaking through his bushy light brown hair, but it seemed to me that no time had passed for either of them. They talked for a while about life and people, about things that had happened. Then we were on our way again. We continued along the canyon road, the grade becoming steeper and steeper as we climbed to the top of a mountain range. As we crested the ridge, we saw the far off across the San Francisco Bay to the skyline of the tall city buildings, haloed by soft white clouds. Off to the left was the airport with a big jet waiting to carry us back to Japan. I'll return here again one day with my daughter or son. They will be the continuing bridge between my two cultures, and I'll introduce them to these same big trees that knew my grandparents, my mom, my aunts and uncles, their families, and now me. All right, so that completes our chapter 25. It also completes this collection of stories from my daughter. But no worries, I have a special one for you coming up next. It's, from now I'll be talking about my own experiences, and I have one thing happening right now that I am looking forward to telling you about. So watch for the next YouTube video. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.